Welcome to the Proven Principles podcast by Knowing Hospitality, the show that deconstructs and demystifies the inner workings of the hotel industry. Here's your host, Adam Knight.
Okay, Parul, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. It's been a while, and we've got a really great show lined up today.
Yeah, we do. I have a lot of things to talk about. Hopefully, I get all my points across, but we'll see.
So revenue management. So before we dive into that, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, where you started your career, and how you ended up where you are today?
Absolutely. So I've been doing revenue management for about 15 years in the hospitality space, and that's what I started with. Not that it was something that I really wanted to do, but it was 2008 and 7, and I was like, all right, let's just do something about and finish my MBA degree. And I was like, let's do something with my career, and hospitality landed on my desk, and I was like, okay, let's try it out. And I haven't ever looked back. So that's the good part. Now I can say that, I've had half of my career spent in the United States, where I have worked in the revenue management space with branded as well as independent hotels. And then half of my career, I have worked in the Asia, Middle East, Africa, Australia market with branded hotels as well as independents in India too. So I was born and raised in India, and then I moved here 8 years back. And it's been a great journey. And, I have been a strong proponent of why revenue management needs to exist, why it needs to be a discipline that needs to be nourished and cherished. So I am very excited to talk about it today.
It's interesting. I mean, you bring a truly global perspective to this. So there's a lot going on around the globe when it comes to hotels and revenue management and hotels coming back in the market.
Yeah, everyone is talking about very similar principles, but every market is going to behave differently. Even in the United States, for that matter, every hotel, every city, or every hotel is going to be very different. For example, we've been talking about do not discount your hotels, and do not go lower on your rates, because it'll be very difficult to bring back up. And discounting doesn't get you occupancy or doesn't get you the profitability, but that is going to be very different with Vegas hotels, for that matter, because they will go ahead and discount their rooms because they have different sources of revenue that is going to actually make it to the bottom line or to the top line, for that matter. So every market is different. I just see everything is very segmented, but the principles of revenue management still exist and remains the same. There is no past, and the playing field is very level right now, with experience going out to the garbage that just go ahead and improvise. But it's interesting to follow different leaders and follow different people from different countries and understand their perspectives.
I think you bring up an interesting point that it's not just about selling rooms anymore. You really have to look at it holistically, because you have all these different sources of revenue coming in. Vegas is a great example of that. But every hotel has, obviously there's the rooms, what to sell, when to sell, at what price, at what time of day, all that. But you've got food and beverage, there's banquets, there's parking there. Looking at it holistically is really important. Before we get too deep into the weeds on this, because I know we can go pretty deep, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a perspective on what is going on in the market from your side? What are you seeing out there? When you talk to people, from a revenue management perspective, what are you seeing? What should people be doing?
So before I basically dive into this, I want to talk about how revenue management has evolved over the last so many years, and how is it different right now. People talk about revenue management. Oh, it is about managing the revenue. And if there is no revenue, why do we need revenue managers? It is the right price, just pricing your rooms. Revenue management isn't that anymore. That is something that, GMs, owners, and, the industry needs to understand, that now revenue management is not about just the right price, the right time, and, the right person. It is more about the entire life cycle of the guest. It is about how can you generate that demand, how can you make that guest stay with you, and then of course follow up on that entire life cycle. It is demand generation, it is distribution, it's basically that entire, like how to get that top line, but also measure and bring it down to the bottom line. That's what revenue management is all about, which I definitely want everyone to understand. Things have changed, just as I previously said, that at least the playing field is leveled now. Like people cannot just say, oh, I have experience in doing this, so I am telling you this is going to be the right thing to do. That's not the case anymore. Data is obsolete, but it is still the king. You need to still measure, how things are changing. You may not be able to measure things as of last year, but, probably week by week, day by day, your data is changing, the scenarios are changing, and you need to continuously adapt to the new changing environment and reevaluate and form your strategies based on that, not based on what has worked in the past. So that is something that I feel revenue managers and the industry needs to understand, that what has worked in the past is not going to be working now. So reevaluate and adapt very quickly, because that is something that's really important.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, revenue management, some of the systems that people use, place probably an overwhelmingly large emphasis on past data to decide what to do in the future. But when that data is effectively irrelevant right now, how do you do that? Are you kind of in your system all day long, just seeing what demand looks like? You're looking at what your competitors are doing. Are you A/B testing different strategies? What are you doing?
I think A/B testing different strategies is something that I'll definitely talk about, but let me cover the point where you said that we are looking at you continuously in the system. A lot of revenue management systems now are, of course, not looking at just the past data, but also looking at, what is happening in the last 4 weeks, or what has happened in the last 1 week, and that is your history rather than what has happened in the past, which is very important for revenue managers to analyze as well. I definitely do not encourage, an analysis, like a paralysis of analysis kind of a situation, like you get into your numbers and completely make nothing out of it. So that is something that you should refrain from. But what you should do is improvise very, very quickly, adapt to the new normal. This is going to be the new normal. Maybe 90% occupancy is not going to be a sold out house where you start charging a premium, but maybe 60% is where you start charging a premium, because that is something that you are going to sustain with. Your 60 is going to be your new 90, maybe, right? Understand what your new normal is, and based on that, based on those new normals, like evaluate your strategies, test it, adapt to those strategies, test it, reevaluate them, and improvise. And if they haven't worked, go back to the drawing board and formulate new strategies or tactics to be able to understand and understand your customer segmentation. For that matter, we've been talking about what segment comes back first. Like we've always depended on those 20 market segments, throw that out of the window for now, because that's not going to work. Those are not the segments that are going to be there in the next few years or months to come. So maybe if you think that your drive market and your leisure segment is going to be your customer base, then go ahead. Don't put that in one big bucket. Oh yeah, this is going to be leisure. Reevaluate, resegment that leisure segment, basically customer base, and understand the I would say understand their booking patterns, understand what is driving them to come to you, what is it that you can sell to them, what is going to make them comfortable in those. And, it could be, you segment that leisure segment based on different drive markets, or you segment it based on demographics. So you need to understand all of that and then resegment that. Focus on what you can do for the customer rather than what you can do for your business. Like think from a customer's perspective.
Yeah, I like that. Which goes back to your original point that this isn't just something that is about, setting a rate and waiting to see if people come in. You really have to bring in a team of people to have visibility on all these different variables so that you can make a collective decision with all of the best information that you have at hand.
Absolutely. And have those distribution channels open. Like go back and look at your content. It's something that just pops in my mind right now, which a lot of the times we as revenue managers fight for, and stakeholders fight for, is like, oh my God, we don't want this OTA contribution. Why is that so high? Like you're just selling too much OTAs. But we need to reevaluate each and every channel and market segment to be able to see what is the most profitable for us. Like, do we have have the money and do we want to spend the money for those direct marketing efforts? If at all that 15% or an 18% commission model is something that we can sustain with and that's cheaper, then yeah, go ahead and sell it to your OTAs. Like, that is going to be, that is the point that now I fight for. Like, can you beat it? If you can, kudos to you. Go ahead, look at your ROAS and, sell it and get that direct market and get that direct customer. But if you can't, don't waste your money on that. Put those resources somewhere else.
Yeah.
Go ahead and sell on those OTAs.
No, that's a great example. I mean, take what you can get right now, because that's, while, we're seeing some news that hotels are, picking up and even in some cases full on Fridays and Saturdays on the weekends, you still have Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Sunday night to deal with.
Understand where you want that guest to be and when you want to open up your distribution channels. Like that is what we need to be doing. Like that's the bread and butter, like forecast. Like maybe now we are not forecasting 30 days out. We're just forecasting a week out. Like, we need to be prepared operationally to be able to like take in those walk-in guests or be able to take in guests who are just booking 2 days out. Like, sitting on a Thursday, we should be prepared that maybe our Friday, Saturdays for a leisure market is going to be full because the weather is good. People are going to drive down. Be prepared for all of these things. Empower the workforce to be able to do different things rather than continuously go back to their managers to seek for approval. Empower people and, be a good leader at this time too.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually really good advice. There was something that came up on the podcast with Josh Hogan that he talked about. Don't put your marketing dollars against marketing against the OTAs.
Yeah.
So you're paying a commission to have an OTA guest come and stay with you, but then you're marketing against the OTAs. So you're double spending there. And I think, it's worth bringing up again, emphasizing that point in the context of what you're talking about, because there has been traditionally a lot of reluctance to have, to your point, too much OTA business staying in the hotel. But in some cases, that might be all that's coming out of the faucet right now, by and large.
Yeah.
So if the reluctance has always been against paying the commission for those rooms to come in, you might be able to save by reallocating marketing dollars or just being smart further down in your P&L to mitigate some of those commission costs that you're paying.
Absolutely. And who is winning in all of this? It's Google who's winning, right? Because the OTA ends up paying, the bid cost to Google, and so are we. And we're making another company rich, which is already very rich. So rather concentrate and put your marketing dollars towards where you can get that guest to stay with you. And that is something that I encourage revenue managers to look at very often. Is go back and look at your P&L. And that is something that I always ask my revenue managers towards the end of the month. Okay, tell me, don't tell me that you've increased your store share. Great, kudos to you, but that is not going to the bank. What is going to the bank for the owners is something that they look for, right? So look at your P&L. Tell me if you generated that top line revenue, how much have you paid to be able to generate that top line revenue. So that is something that's very important. And that's where I always say, bring your revenue managers to the table to be able to give them the flexibility and give them that, empower them to be able to think in that fashion, make them think like entrepreneurs, like owners, so that they understand that, something that someone asked me, in an interview was that, how do you define success? And when I spoke to that person, once I got to know him, he was like, I found that answer very cocky. I said, why? And the answer that I gave was, I define success by what goes to the bank. That is my measure of success. It isn't RGI or it isn't RevPAR, because that is something, we have defined that for ourselves. Like we can define any number and make any number look good because numbers is something that we can play with continuously. Exactly. So what goes to the bank is actually successful because you're making money. We are in this business to make money. Everyone is in business to make money. So, if you can't generate that, then it doesn't matter.
You just made all the asset managers listening very happy.
more subscribers.
Exactly. So, with that, it's hard to get a bead on what's going on in the future right now. If anybody tells you they know what's going to happen, they're just trying to get clickbait. I don't know what, but there are probably some practices that have worked in the past in terms of trying to get visibility on the future. So, and some of that may not be having a crystal ball, but it may just be making sure your foundation is solid, so that you can build on it as we get into, what this is all going to look like throughout the rest of the year. Long-winded question, or way of phrasing the question, but as you look at the next 30, 60, 90 days, what are some things that hotels and revenue managers should be doing to set themselves up for success?
So yes, the industry is going to come back, and it's coming back. We've seen the worst. The worst decline was about 79 point some percent in the month of April, and coming back. May was like 70% down year over year. I'm talking about just the US right now, and it is coming back. To answer your question, things have worked in the past, which will work and may not work in the future. What I definitely want to say is that those marketing plans, those budgets in those business plans, they need to go out of the window, because that is not going to work. Like, I was listening to someone, I was listening to Simon Sinek's podcast, and, he was talking about this finite game and that infinite game. We are not in the finite game. We as hoteliers have always been in that finite game, like beat the competitor on store, next week, and we win. We are in that infinite game. We need to sustain this particular scenario, and that is going to be successful. And that 30, 60, 90-day plan is not going to work. What is going to work is the next week plan. Understand and reevaluate it every single day, and then build your plan. Come back every single day and reevaluate it, to be very honest. Like, we cannot have a long-term plan. We can have scenarios like, okay, if this happens, for example, if I have 40 rooms empty in my hotel and we are prepared to have them empty, how can I generate additional demand for those 40 rooms? Can I give it to a long-term guest? Can I convert it into apartments? Like, what do we need to do to generate demand? We can create scenarios like that and work on those scenarios, but having a plan in terms of this is how things are going to unfold, I don't think is going to be possible in this scenario, because it's going to be different. We don't know if we're going to be hit with another one in October. That's what everyone is talking about. So that way, we don't know about. That's the unknown, but we can be prepared for scenarios. Something that I started talking about starting in March, when all of this hit us, was that, okay, how can we as hoteliers adapt very quickly? Something that we haven't done traditionally is that hotels are very traditional. They take such slow steps moving forward, and there are these small startups that quickly improvise and things change. How quickly Airbnb improvised and changed, and bookings have started to rise. Hoteliers don't think that way, and that needs to change. We need to quickly readapt and reevaluate and stop saying we as hoteliers don't do that. No, hotels don't do that. Hotels need to understand what is going to be an additional source of revenue for them to be able to sustain and pay their bills, right? So can we convert those hotels into apartments? Can we have a subscription-based model? Learn from other industries. Revenue management exists in every single industry because everyone needs to make money, right? So how can you learn from different industries and not just from hotels to be able to generate that particular additional dollar is something that we need to look at. So the 30, 60, 90-day plan, I would say, is more like a week-on-week plan. I plan that I'm going to have I'm going to focus on this particular customer base. I'm going to market this way, and this is how I'm going to get them to stay with us and then take care of them. Okay, it didn't work for us. Okay, what is our next plan? And then start improvising on that. So
yeah, I really like the way that you phrased that, or the way you position it, because, you may have been having a 30, 60, 90-day plan in the past because your booking window was a lot longer. Your booking window might be day of now. It probably is in a lot of cases, day of, or 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. Yeah. And so yeah, trying to find ways to deal with maybe the extra, 40 rooms that are sitting there vacant that you can't sell. Actually, your idea, it's got me thinking now, your idea of a membership or a subscription model that's a really interesting, fantastic idea, I think, as a way to to try to generate some revenue. You almost have me speechless on that. So my brain now is, of course, going, I actually really like that idea.
I actually did send out some emails. I know hotels are something like, they don't think in this direction. But when I pondered over this over LinkedIn, I got a lot of people talking about it, but no implementation on this particular thing. So I went ahead and sent emails to a lot of startup founders with these, apart hotels or people who are working with this lifestyle brands. Yeah, right. So, like, why don't you do this? Because it's easier for you to implement it rather than having, big hotels like the Marriotts and, the Hiltons do it. But I think it's a great way to even go back to your corporate clients and say, I'm not going to give you a rate. I'm going to give you this voucher of this many room nights. Go ahead, take it, generate some cash flow, pay your employees, and be cash rich. At this point of time, cash flow is something that everyone needs, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Okay. Podcast topic for another day. Let's, we'll put a pin in that one. Okay. So, leading into this crisis here, we've had a long run of great times. A lot of hotels were successful, money coming in, business was great. Some of the best results anybody's ever had in a long time.
Yep.
And in situations like that, that usually masks bad practices because you just have to, you're just waiting for the phone to ring. You don't have to go out and find any business. Are there any practices that probably got masked from your perspective when times were good that we should be aware of today so that we don't repeat some of those mistakes?
Yes. So I think one of the things, and that it may come as like, oh, she's a revenue person, so she is going to, talk about revenue managers being important. But that is something that I say at this time, your revenue managers are actually important, and which could be that, okay, the GMs we have a revenue management system which is going to go ahead and tell us the rates. And I know my hotel. I've been working in this market for the last 20 years. I know this is the rate that should be set up, and they go ahead and do it. That is not going to work anymore because the past is outdated. So you cannot go back and say, I charged $300 last year, I'm just going to charge a 10% increment this year. That is not going to work. And your competitors may either be closed or may not be your true competitors anymore. So an luxury consumer and like a luxury hotel may be stealing share from the upper upscale segments, because that line is thinning down. So things that have worked in the past is not going to work right now, which is going to be different. So, we need to think out of the box and readapt and reevaluate, as I've been talking all over during this podcast. Think differently, think out of the box, and think how can you generate additional demand. Like your segments that have worked in the past are not going to work now. So that is going to be different. But things that have worked in the past is, if that data is not significant, but those data points is something that you need to evaluate and think and then market based on that. That is something that has worked in the past. As hotels, we don't do cost plus marketing. We do value-based, we do value-based pricing, right? So how can you value your product to be able to price it the way that a consumer wants to see? I know that a lot of people are talking about, well, hygiene is very important, go ahead and market it. I think that is a given. Like, in a hotel, you need to have a bed. That is a given. So hygiene is a given. Like having people wearing a PPE, given. Having sanitizers all of the hotel, that's a given. But technology is important. Like, how can you have touchless, check-ins or checkouts? Like, how can people people who are coming to hotels, they want to interact, they want to have a good time, but still not catch the infection? How is technology going to help you? Things like that may have not worked in the past. Like, okay, they don't have technology, but they have a great product and they have great service. That has worked for us in the past, may not work in the future. Right? Work at this point of time. So something to think about there is technology, how technologically advanced you are. Things that have been okay in the past have been, okay, your guest reviews, oh, I got one bad guest review, but the rest of them were fine. And then you just are thinking, but you may not give that guest review that much importance. Now, one bad guest review is going to take you back like 5 months. So take care of your guests, take care of them while they're at their hotel and also after they check out. So that entire life cycle needs to be treated well. things that have worked in the past have also been that you use a lot of your destination marketing to be able to get, the guests to the hotel. And just because the destination is full, you keep on charging that premium. That is not going to be there anymore. And as I said, your 60 could be your new 90. So start thinking about that it is not necessary that you go ahead and discount your room prices until you've reached that 70% occupancy or that 80% or 90% occupancy and then charge a premium, but do a value-based pricing. Don't discount, but don't go ahead and charge that premium, which is going to leave your guest rooms vacant as well. Like, be realistic and be empathetic towards people too. The economy is going to come back, and that's when travel is going to come back too. Yeah. So we need to be aware of all of those macro environment issues, and to be able to attract those guests. So things like that have been okay in the past. Everyone is doing well. Yeah, of course, our Friday, Saturdays will be full. Go ahead and charge that premium, and people are going to pay, and that's not going to be there anymore. So you need to be more vigilant about how you are reaching out to that guest. How are you charging that guest? How satisfied is the guest for paying you that premium, if at all they are? And that's for luxury segments.
Yeah, no more setting and forgetting.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think your point about luxury stealing share from upper upscale, that will waterfall all the way down.
Absolutely.
If you wanted to stay at, name your luxury brand, and you couldn't afford it before, and now you can get in there for, maybe $99.
Yeah.
That's going to make it really hard for hotels further down the chain.
Yeah.
To be able to compete.
That is true. And people who so it also depends upon people who've been able to keep their jobs during this pandemic, and people who've lost jobs as well. People who've been able to keep their jobs and have been earning well, like the tech and the pharma companies of the world. Like, those are the people who will travel, and they will be able to afford much more than what they could. And then there's going to be a shift in what kind of people and demographic you were seeing at your hotel. So be able to, for hoteliers and operationally, to be able to have your mindset ready for that change and not be able to just, think in the direction that has worked in the past. So that is very important. Mm-hmm. And I was about to say something which I completely forgot about. So
That's okay. That's okay. No, but the service levels and the acknowledgement that maybe a different guest, different traveler that you haven't seen in your hotel in the past is a very it's not just a real possibility, it's definitely going to be happening. So even just getting off the revenue management topic for a second, but holistically from an operations perspective, you have to be willing to adjust your service levels, and even change your offering to suit the new demographic that you're starting to see in your hotel. And that might be driven because of the rate that's being put out in the market.
Yep, absolutely. And that is the reason I always say, don't just discount for the heck of it. Like, understand, like, this is going to be a value-based pricing model industry forever. So understand your values, and because it's very difficult to come back up. So price based on what you want to sell, and then there'll be people who would come, and then there'll be people who wouldn't. But segment your market and understand the segments that you want to sell to.
Yeah, I like that. So it's a huge topic, revenue management, and to try to stay on top of it, it could be that's a full-time job, obviously. But are there any resources that you've used or gone after that have kind of helped you either get more information or keep your skills sharp, or just sort of develop your ability to just be a better revenue manager all around? Things that you've benefited from, or things that you've told other revenue managers that have worked for you in the past that they should go after?
Absolutely. So, as I said, that I worked, almost all over the world now. So one thing that has worked for me is having mentors. And that is something that I learn a lot from. I have conversations, I've had conversations with so many people in the last 3-4 3 or 4 months that I've actually not had conversations for a while. I was like at my job and doing, the daily tasks. So having those conversations really helped me, and reading about materials from different parts of the world really helps me as well. So having mentors and having open communications where people may agree and disagree with you, and having those conversations to be able to talk about different ideas from different industries, like, something that has worked in the Asia Pacific may now work in the US, or something that's worked in the US may now work in the Middle East. Like, like talking about all of those different aspects and learning from them has really helped me. I read a lot of white papers. So, like a lot of companies keep on publishing those, and that is something that I really read about. And the reason it's not about just, learning about this situation, but just to keep me ahead and abreast of what's happening in the world, because in our daily lives, we end up unlearning a lot of things. So going back to the drawing board and learning is very important for me. I learn a lot from people who I coach and mentor too, because sometimes when you hear from those people who are doing the job on a day-to-day basis, and you've been away from it and managing people, you are away from the happenings of what's happening at the base level. So having those conversations is very important. So yeah, that is something that's helped me. Have your mentors, and read a lot of white papers, because people are talking about it, and it's not necessary to agree with those points, but it gives you the visibility. Like, be educated about what's happening in the world and different industries. So one more thing that I would definitely say helped me is working in different, independent hotels as well as branded hotels. The branded hotels give you a lot of structure, and, they made me learn a lot of basics, but I was able to implement a lot of those things at independent hotels that did not have structure, etc. So, applying things that I've learned from one place to the other really helps me to test.
I like that. And there's so much free content out there right now. There's podcasts. I mean, you go on LinkedIn, do any search on Google for webinars and training courses.
Yeah.
There's discounts, free resources out there. So it's not hard to find things to keep your skills sharp.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So wrapping up the show, just getting to the end here.
Yeah.
Are there any practices from your perspective that hotels, revenue managers, maybe anybody who is at least maybe plugged into revenue management, that they could implement today that would give them the most, bang for their time and their effort?
Be available. Firstly, go back and look at your content, which you may have not for a very long period of time, just because times were good. So go back and look at your content. I always say that things that are like, do your A/B testing. A lot of people come to me and said, what do you think is the best solution to this particular problem? And there is no best solution. Test, and reevaluate and improvise, and be able to do all of those different things. That is going to be the key right now as well. Data is still important. It is still the king. Like, go back and evaluate your data. Go back and do that analysis, rather than thinking everyone is doing this, so we should do it too. But you can prove those everyone wrong or right based on your own analysis. And don't show me a spreadsheet saying that, oh, let me show you a spreadsheet. Tell me what those numbers mean, and be able to articulate those numbers in a way that the audience wants to listen to. Like, I have had numbers in the past where I've explained it very differently to a revenue manager, and very differently to a director of sales, and very differently to an owner. So be able to articulate your numbers in the way that your audience, or the person who you're presenting to, wants to listen to. So something like that is really, really important as well. And don't be obsessed by being number one. Be obsessed by being in the game right now.
So, that's the quote of quotes right there.
Yeah. I borrowed it from someone, but that is something that I will say.
I like it.
But that is something that I will say is very important.
So if people wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best place for them to go? If they want to learn more about you, get in touch with you.
LinkedIn. I am Adam. I don't know if you know about it, but I'm doing a lot of pro bono work right now, because I really want to help out people. out of this pandemic, and this industry has given me a career, and I want to give back to the industry. So I'm doing a lot of pro bono work. So if people want to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to do some analysis for you, give you direction, and you will not be charged for it, which is a good thing.
That's outstanding. Yeah, thanks, Parul. I'll actually link to your profile in the show notes. So if anybody wants to find you, go to the show notes and it'll be right there. But listen, this has been a true pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show today. Share your expertise. I think there's a ton of amazing, actionable, tactical information in here. So there's you've cleared the road ahead for a lot of people. Thanks for taking the time.
That's good to hear. Thank you so much for having me, Adam. This was a great show.
Thanks for listening to the Proven Principles podcast with Adam Knight. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. The podcast is brought to you by Knowing Hospitality, a full-service hotel management company that puts your performance first by rethinking the management model. Visit knowinghospitality.com to learn more. Until next time.